share screen. So you should all be able to see this now. And we will start with the importance, obviously, of daily recordings. And what we've done is I've brought it back to begin with to the quality standards, so that it's just a reminder for us of where they are and where these points are that we need to be clear on before we start actually recording things. Those of you that have worked with me before, have come to my sessions before, know that I was an Ofsted inspector for a period of time, literally only 9 years. And I've been in social work for 50 years this year. But it was 9 years where I learned a great deal. And one of these was one of my absolute favourite recommendations that I would give. So first of all, if you're looking at the quality standards for children's homes, and I'm aware there are people here from children's homes and supported accommodation, on page 62 in the children's homes quality standards and on page 58 in supported accommodation is where you'll find your information. So if you go to those and you have a look at these particular paragraphs, 14.3 for the children's home says clearly, and it brings in which the regulations are, that all of our children's case records must be stored securely whilst they remain in the home, kept up to date, signed and dated by the author of each entry, and they must be kept for 75 years from the date of birth of the child, or if the child dies before the age of 18, for 15 years from the date of his or her death. That's really, really important because, as we'll look at, we're part of their history. And then 14.4, which was one of my absolute favourites of giving recommendations, is that the staff should be familiar with the home's policies on record keeping and understand the importance of careful, objective and clear recording. Staff should record information on individual children in a non-stigmatising way that distinguishes between fact, opinion and third-party information. Information about the child must always be recorded in a way that will be helpful to the child. I think that's a really powerful paragraph, and it's one that if you understand it,
thank you. Bye.
You're putting that into the way that you work, this will cover what you need to do. Because it's really important, non-stigmatizing. It's often you can read a records, and those of you that are managers, when you're going in to evaluate some records, you can read, can't you, whether or not that member of staff is cross with the child or frustrated or tired or simply doesn't understand what's going on at the moment. So it's really, really important that we use non-stigmatizing. And that the home's records on each child represent a significant contribution to their life history, which it does, depending on how long they live with us. And children and their parents should be supported to understand the nature of records kept by the home and how to access them. So if they wanted to come back at a later time and read their records, do they know that they can? And would you have position in place? Would you have situations in place where they could do that? And staff should understand their important role, encouraging the child to reflect on and understand their history. If you think about it, think back to when you were 15, 16, 17, and maybe getting involved in things that your parents were worried about, siblings were worried about, friends were worried about, and you were trying to make sense of what was going on in your world. When you get older, you've got those people, hopefully still in your lives, to explain what was going on for you at the time. Our children don't have that. They have us. And they have the things that are written down about them. And we might not be there when they come back. You may have retired, you may have moved on to another home, you may have left because you don't want to do this work anymore. We all move on at different times. And so when they come back, you might not be there that has written that, but those records are there. So it's really, really important that they're written in a way that makes sense for our children. And I know I'm teaching you to suck eggs. I know you know this. But often we can forget, can't we? And one of the things that is really sort of clear, something that sort of stuck in my mind from somebody I've worked with before who I really admire, says when you look at the length of our shifts, there's 24 hours in a day, and there could be 1 or 2 hours when that child is being really, really difficult. What about the other 22? Do we remember those, or do we just remember those 2 hours? I did some work yesterday in a school where we were looking at how to remember positive things. And what I was saying to them is one of the things perhaps you could be doing is actually making a note for when you see a child behaving compassionately or with inclusivity or just understanding things, that you remember that. So if somebody asks you, you can think, oh yeah, it wasn't just a horrid day, this happened. And one of the staff I was working with said, we could call it a joy journal, which I think is a brilliant idea. And that's what we're going to do in that school, is that they're going to have a joy journal where they can record the positives. Now with Mentor, you can do that already. Those of you that have got version 3 and version 2, you know the button at the top, example of good practice? You could be ticking on that and saying, clicking that as a reminder of the good things that happened that day. So those paragraphs we've looked at, what do they mean to you? And can any of you identify a sentence from each paragraph that stood out for you that we were looking at? Does anyone want to say? This is where I unmute you all. There's 100 of you here. Well, 100 screens anyway, and I know there's more than one in some screens. Don't worry if you can't, because I've pulled some out for you. No? Okay then.
Yeah, I think what really stick out for me is the non-stigmatization recording, because
Yes.
lots of the times it does happen quite a lot where people just forget the bad things that a young person has done, forgetting all the good things that they've done in 23 hours. They will focus on the 10 minutes that they've been not behaving, the way they should be.
Absolutely.
And it's actually said that we miss all the good work and just focus on it's not only unfair, but it's not a true reflection of the young person's behavior throughout the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is why, some of the things I've broken down in this presentation, you may think, why is she going into that in such detail? It's going to be a trigger, hopefully, for you to remember to record these other things as well. Because too often when I look at records, and I work with a couple of companies where I do kind of mentor checks for them, and I look at their daily recordings so I can see what is happening in the home, look for patterns, support them in that way. And very often there'll be big blanks of the day, and then all of a sudden it's the young person's being rude, and I'm like, well, hang on, where were they the rest of the time? So it's about making sure we've got that clear picture for everybody. Okay, so the sentences I'm hoping you found is that case records must be kept up to date and signed and dated by the author of each entry. Now that is really, really important, that the people that are writing the records own it. And we'll see sort of later on, part of the reason why this is so important is it's for the child so that they can see who wrote that about them. It's for you as managers, those of you that are managers, so that you can see who wrote it. And this helps you establish patterns and ways of working, anything you may need to address, but also to protect the staff on occasion, because if there is a risk of allegation and it hasn't been recorded clearly, how can you show what it was that you talked about and it was you that did that? Or if a child has gone missing and there's big gaps, do you know actually when they left the house? Do you know where they were? Do you know what their mood was before they went out? And 14.4, and this ties in with what Jella said, understand the importance of careful, objective, and clear recording. Staff should record information on individual children in a non-stigmatizing way. Those of you that have worked with me before know that I don't like the word smirked, because very often you can pick that up in records, and I've seen it in all sorts of places where somebody will record that they got in from school and they didn't perhaps have a good day and they were smirking at me. Smirk is a very pejorative word. How do you know they weren't smiling nervously? I sometimes smile and you know, I can sort of cry in anger. That may be something that they do, that our children do. Do you know that? So you've got to be very careful with the use of the words that you're using. And distinguishes between fact, opinion, and third-party information. It's not about your impressions necessarily. It's about actually what was happening. And this is the biggie. Home's records on each child represent a significant contribution to their life history. This is who they are at this time in their lives. And we are the people, I think, privileged to live that period of time with them and actually have that with them. And so we're recording that for them so that when they look back, they could look back next week, they could look back next year, they could come back when they're 25, 30 years old and read them, because we're part of their history. So where does that fit then with daily recordings? Those really important things. I've already given you sort of some of the answers, but can you see from that why daily recordings can be so important? So we'll move on. But first of all, why do you think we keep them? Why we asked for them? Anybody want to say? No? Okay, we've got the answers. I'm hoping. I suppose it is harder when there are so many people here and you're not all muted now, but sort of you can unmute yourself if you want to. Okay, we'll move on then. So these points, did you identify these? At the time they're living with us, we are our children's history. So if they're living in their family homes, they've got people all around them who they'll know into adulthood. They will help them remember times and changes from their childhood. So it could be that they really struggled when they changed schools, you know, when they went from primary school to senior school, or did they move house in that time? Did a family member lose their job? Did an older sibling leave? There'll be all sorts of things that will go on in a child's life, that in our child's lives and in our lives, that somebody can tell us about and can remind us. So the daily recordings were a record of each child's day. That sounds really obvious, I know. But details of a day can so easily be forgotten. And it's really important to acknowledge that interactions with our children and young people have taken place. So it's not just about when they got up in the morning and when they go to bed at night. It's what happened during that period of time, all those other things that we'll be looking at with them. You know, with your own children, don't you? Do you clock what they're wearing when they leave the house? Do you know what they look like when they come home, when you go to pick them up from school? So things like that are really important, that we kind of clock unconsciously with our own children and in our families, and we need to be doing that with our children in our homes as well. Protection. This is a biggie. What time did something take place? Did a child or young person say something that appeared inconsequential at the time, but could have been really important? And I'm thinking back to my Ofsted days here, one of the homes where I didn't actually inspect this home, but I was sent in afterwards after a young person had committed suicide. And they'd said during the day that, this was it. And they'd given a couple of things away to the other young people in the home, and then they'd left. And nobody picked up on, well, kind of, why is she doing that? One of the things that she gave was a nail set, when you can put false nails on and then paint them. And she loved her nails. And she gave a set of those nails to one of the other young people and left the house. And later that same day, she was found on train tracks. So it's about what time, what did they do? What are you looking at? Evidence. You're with our children for the time you're on shift. What are you doing with them? Saying to them? What are they saying to you? Who else is around? And this information may be needed if a child goes missing, is injured, or makes an allegation against you. So, for example, if you're all in the kitchen, hub of the home in so many of our homes, isn't it? Love a kitchen. So if you're all in the kitchen having a chat, everybody's having a hot drink, whatever, who else is there? What are you all talking about together? What's the atmosphere? Make sure that it's clear. So how should you complete a daily recording? And these are the basics, and these are the things that you think, why is she being so pernickety? But it's because, as I've said, it could be evidence. It's something for the child. It's something to protect you as staff members, but also for you as managers so that you can have the overall picture. For our staff, make sure it's clear. Always use your own login. Never make entries on someone else's login or leave your login open. And that should be a given, shouldn't it? But how many times have you found that a login has been left open and people have been recording in that half the day and that member of staff has left? They're not there yet, or they've gone out for the day. Ensure that the date and time are correct. And then let's get into the meat of the day, as it were. What time did your child wake up? Or did you wake them up? How were they? So were they cheerful? Were they happy? Were they didn't want to get up? Did they have breakfast? And what did they do after that, after breakfast? Did they go to school, college, family contacts, stay at home on an activity? What did they actually do? I know with a lot of our kids, it could be that you go to wake them up, they don't want to get up and they stay in bed because they don't want to go to school today, they don't want to interact. That's fine, as long as you record that you've done that and that they're there. So did they have lunch at home? And then what did they do in the afternoon? Again, the same points. It's not about big gaps in the day. It's about making it clear where they were, what was happening with them. Did they eat their evening meal together with you and other young people? Now that's a real biggie as well, because very often our children want to eat their evening meal in their room. How do we know they've eaten it? How do we know they are eating? What are they eating? It's not just about filling in boxes. It's about making sure that we know that they're eating a healthy diet and that they're well. And if they're not eating with all of you, why not? Is that a social skill they need to learn? Is this something where they don't feel they fit in with the rest of the children in the home, with all of you? Are they not comfortable with some staff? When you're looking at patterns, it could be that when a certain member of staff is on shift, the young person never eats with everybody. Why? Start asking yourself those questions about being clear in that way. During the day, did they have a key work session? Did they have any contact with family members or professionals? Was there an incident, physical intervention, accident? Have they been referred to in the dailies and then written up in the right place in Mentor? Really important that they're done. So it's nice and clear for you. And if you have it in the dailies for you as managers, you can oversee this more readily, more easily. But a biggie as well is, have they completed any key skills today? Have you noted that? And they're written up in the appropriate place on Mentor. Now, a key skill can be something as simple as, I had a shower this morning they change their clothes, they clean their teeth. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's brilliant when they help you with the doing the shopping list, work out a budget, go do the shopping with you, or cook a meal. But another key skill could be going out on an activity with you, going for a drive in the car, going to look perhaps at a park nearby, or a youth club that they might think about joining, or army cadets, or anything like that. That's a key skill because it's part of their social and life skills that they're learning. So it's really important that you record that as well, so you're starting to pick up on that. And if they're missing, have you made sure it's recorded in the daily entry that they're missing and what you're doing, and not just left the page blank? Very often when you look, and I see this more in supported accommodation provisions, where a young person may be missing and the information is in the missing log, which is good and it's right, absolutely nothing in the dailies. So there's no record there, there's no pattern that you're looking at. So make sure, even if it's just still, you could put missing, see missing log for full details, or contacted the social worker. I'm being very careful not to use names because there's so many people here. I don't want to use anybody's name accidentally, but just leave the page blank, because that looks like you've actually not done very much. And if they're away on holiday, staying with friends, staying with their family, is it clear where they are? And any contact you've had with them has been fully recorded. I mean, it's absolutely magic, isn't it, when our kids are able to go and stay in contact with family members, or an overnight with their friends like ours do. But have you made it clear where they are? And if you phoned them at bedtime to say, you know, have a good sleep, thinking about you, did you have a good day? Has that been recorded? Because so often that can get missed. And I've seen in records, when I've been asked to monitor records for different companies, and I say, well, where is everybody? Oh, we forgot. And it's partly because they don't remember to put it in the dailies, so they don't put it in there. They think it's okay that they're there. It's keeping that thing going. And then what did they do in the evening? When they get home from school or college or work, some of our children at work, I know of a couple of kids, for example, are working at Tesco's, one in a pet shop, you know, this sort of thing. What did they do? Did they have family contact? Were they staying at home without an activity? Were they on free time with their friends? What time did you plan to go and pick them up? Were they there when you went? So what time did they come home after they'd been out? And how were they? So if they came home, one home asked me to look at some work that had happened with a young person who had a new group of friends. And when they came home, on the way home, they changed the music that they were playing in the car, because usually they would hook their phone up with Bluetooth to the car radio and play one kind of music. But this new group of friends, they'd started listening to a different kind of music. And when they got home, the way they were talking had changed. The way they were had changed since they'd been with a new group of friends. And professional curiosity would have you think, well, okay, are these friends good for them? What is going on with them? And that was picked up through the dailies. Just a simple thing where the member of staff, really good piece of work by the member of staff, had recorded that it was different music that they played in the car on the way home, and he seemed angrier. The young person seemed angrier. It's a really good thing that you can pick up from a simple piece of work. And then when it comes to bedtime, where are your children? How are they when they're settling for bed? Because that can be, we all know, for our children, settling for bed could be a really lonely and stressful time. And for some of them, it could be the scariest time because of previous life experiences before they came to us. So how are you making sure that it's a calm time for them? How are you making sure they have a good night's sleep? Do they want you? Do you remember that Peter Kay advert, the joke about the monster under the bed? And people laugh about that, but for some of our children, the monster under the bed was real. So are we maybe checking there's no monsters under the bed for them? Are the curtains drawn properly? Is the room comfortable? Is it how they want it to be? And then are you making sure the house is secure and that any alarms in place have been set? So again, we're reassuring the child. They're letting them know that they're safe. And it's a safe place to go to sleep and to be. So does the recording tell the story of the day? Can you see and hear the child that you know in what you're reading? So, for example, for you as managers and deputies, when you're reading them and you're doing your evaluation and overseeing what has happened, do you recognise that child? Is that the child you know? So it's about making sure that it is clear and it's not all about the staff member, but it's about the child. And then if your child came back 5-10 years' time to read their daily recordings, would they recognise themselves? You know why this is so important? And I'm going to just look straight at you for the moment. How many of you know the actor Neil Morrissey? I don't know if you know him personally or whatever, but he was raised in care. And he was raised in different children's homes. And then the final children's home, somebody there got him involved in a drama group. And that's how he ended up becoming an actor. But he was one of a group of brothers that were all taken from their parents because of neglect. And back in the early 2000s, he was asked to do a TV documentary where he was given his records to read from his time in childhood, where it was looking at, you know, people who have succeeded, who've been in care, who've been looked after. And his impression of what he and his brothers were like was that they were kind of likely lads, very like the character he portrayed in Men Behaving Badly. And he thought that this would give him a little bit more history as to why he was separated from his brother. Because what happened, his closest brother that he was closest to in age and his best friend, they were in court together. Mum and Dad were sitting behind. And then the judge came out, made a decision, and literally Neil went out one door with one set of social workers and his brother went out another one. And they were separated and they ended up in different homes and he didn't know why. But he thought reading that, and he made the mistake, as he said, of reading these documents live on camera rather than them having been read to him before, him checking them out before. I suppose it was going to make really good telly for people. And the record said things like he was a liar and a thief. He could never be trusted. Do not leave him, particularly in a room if there's chocolate, because he'll take it. And he hadn't seen himself as a liar and a thief, but that's the way things were written. And he had a breakdown and he ended up leaving Britain. He went to run a gîte in France for many years before coming back. And he is back now and he's back acting again. But that impact on him was huge. And give him his due, he's been able to be public with that and open with that. And because of the world he's in now and the support he has now and who he is now, he's been able to get through it. His brother died living on his own in a flat, and his body wasn't found for some time, which has really impacted on Neil as well. So our records are immense. They really are. And this is part of the reason why not just the regulation, but you as managers and you as members of staff working with your kids and me feel so passionately that we've got to get it right so that we can read that. And it's not judgmental sentences all the time. It's about what is real for that child at that time. Does that make sense to everybody at the moment?
Yeah.
Yes,
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did
Yes,
any
it
of you
does.
know that story about Neil? Actually, there's a lot of very young people here. You might not even remember Men Behaving Badly, but that was such a powerful thing that happened to him. And he's not the only one. Lem Sissay, the poet, he was raised in children's homes. And if you read some of the things he talks about from when he was in children's homes and what happened with him. And when he finally found out when he was 18 that he thought his name was Arthur Ramsbottom because that's the name they'd given him. And then when he was 18, he discovered he wasn't Arthur Ramsbottom, he was Lem Sissay. So our records are huge. And who knows, any one of our children now, any one of your children now could be the next Neil Morrissey. Pete, what was it you wanted to say?
Yeah, the Neil Morrissey thing I can relate with because I was brought up in care. While I was working in a secure accommodation for young people, I actually requested to see my own records.
Yeah.
And they obviously took out some third-party names out of it. But what I was reading and what was allowed to be written back when I was in care to nowadays, it was like reading a story about someone else. And I actually, I've got the records indoors. And my children have read them, and they can't believe what was said, the way it was said, the way I was portrayed, when I didn't actually feel as though I was that bad, so to speak. So, records from, when I was in care, to, the 70s and early 80s, to records now have improved, but there's still a lot of improving to do.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. My dad was looked after, and there were absolutely no records of his time. So from his time from when he went into care at 3 to when in 13, when he became a minor, we've got no record at all. We have no idea what happened with him. So records, this is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this. They are so important. Jealous.
Yeah, I just want to add on to what you have said there, Marie. My own personal experience, as a manager, sometime, back, when you said as a manager, when you are reading, staff records, do you actually see the child? And it did happen to me that one child was really, there was a record, there was a fire, they set fire to their boyfriend's jumper because they had, fallen out.
Yeah.
And the way it was recorded, it was like, whoa, we have got a huge arsonist here. And I was like, hang on a minute, this is not the child I know. So I questioned that and tried to investigate that. So I went to the neighbor who, was said to be involved, and they're like, no, nothing like that happened. And I was just like, oh my God. But, police were involved and everything else, because it was weekend. Yeah, so I just wanted to add to say it can happen. The way we record, the way we portray young people, if you are not careful, really, we are labeling them, for a lifetime for basic things that, that member of staff could have just said, you know what, why didn't you use a scissors to cut it in pieces, rather than, portray the young person as an arsonist? Because they were just upset, and it was, we all do it. If you've got letters, from your girlfriend and they've done that, you burn them. So I just wanted to share this.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because we've all seen that. And, on the other side of it, quite often, we get referrals, don't we, which don't give a picture of who the child is at all. So we don't know who they are coming through the door, which is why it's even more important that our daily recordings are better. They are so much better than they used to be. So much better than they used to be. But that's partly because Ofsted keep an eye on it. It states in regulations how we should do it. And because of you, because of good managers like you and good members of staff like you that look at it and do it. But it doesn't hurt to be reminded a lot of the time of why we do it. I say further on, it's not about ticking a box. It's about giving that history to a child, a true history of who they are. Okay. So moving on then. So some simple recording tips. If your staff team are getting daily recordings correct, if they're doing them correctly and making sure it's all really clear, it's going to support them when they're recording all entries, for example, keywork sessions. So if you can work with them on getting keep the daily recordings right, so a beginning, a middle, an end, a so what, if possible. I love a so what, you know, so what was the impact? What happened here? Then their keywork sessions will be much better, particularly if they're not using derogatory terms, you know, going back to smirking. And remind yourself why you're making these recordings. It's not just to fill in an empty box on Mentor or keep Ofsted happy. And concentrate on how it will read to the child now. And if they were to come back and read it in 5 to 10 years' time, as we've already said, and whose voice can you hear? The child's or yours? You know, and that's really important when it comes to when staff record things, particularly if they've had a bad day, the member of staff, I mean, and they're tired. And you can see it, can't you? I used to be able to see it all the time. I'd be reading it and I'd think, this member of staff's angry with this child, or they're frustrated with them, or they're bored by them. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be about making sure it's clear for everybody. And a tip, just a really, really basic tip. Before they press save, read it out loud to yourself or to your shift partner. If it sounds angry or bored, rewrite it. So the next time you write a piece of work, and think about those of you that are managers as well, when you're doing a piece of work with your staff, maybe in their supervisions or maybe on a PIP, or you've had to talk to them and you record it, read it out loud to yourself. How does it sound? Make sure it's clear. And a good thing about evaluations with daily recordings, some of you that are coming in really, really late, we're nearly done. Though, you know, on the daily recordings box on Mentor, underneath you've got evaluation, haven't you? And one of the things that is really, really important is that those of you that are here, that are managers or deputies, use that box, evaluate what the day has been like for the child, and you can also put in little comments for staff to remind them of different things. Praise goes a long way for both our staff and our children. And if you see a really good piece of work, if I go back to what I was saying about, remember what I said about the young man who met with a different group of friends, and when the member of staff collected him and was bringing him home in the car, he suddenly started playing different music and was angry when he got in, and it was tied in, a lot of it, with the music. You can pick up on that when you're doing your evaluations. So don't just see them as, oh, you know, yet something else to look at. It helps you to have a clear picture of what has been happening. You can look at what's exactly happening with your children. It helps you find patterns, helps you find ways of working. Are there, I mean, we're at the questions bit, which is, I love this cartoon, why don't trees have leaves in the winter? Boy, you sure are some stupid questions, but even stupid questions have answers. The truth is, it's your turn now to debate, and I'm glad that more people are joining in with the discussion now. How many of you then, managers that are here, how many of you actually read the dailies yourselves and do the evaluation bits? Anyone? Pete?
I'm not a manager, but I do, when I come on shift, I read everybody's daily log previous to me for when I come on shift, so I can get a gist of what they've been and what they've done, and stuff like that. But because I'm not a manager, I wouldn't be doing anything.
But how does, sorry, what's your name?
Anne.
Do you find, are you able to see, does that give you a feel of the child always, or Are you able to see sometimes that maybe some of your colleagues, some of your peers are a little bit ticked off?
I think the majority, because when we write our daily logs, we write it like we're talking to the child. So
Good.
it's more of a story. So, I mean, the majority of the time, I don't think I've ever come across one that is a bit snippety. Obviously, if we have agency in the home, you know, maybe it's a bit different. But ours, when we write our daily logs, it tends to be as we're speaking to a person. But I do like the thought that if you're struggling a little, or maybe you are having an off day, and it has been a bit of a challenging day, speaking it out loud to another member of staff and seeing how it sounds and rewriting it, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Anyone else? Pete?
Yeah, in previous home that I worked in, we used a ClearCare format for recording,
Yeah.
and you know, we as managers wouldn't nothing would be approved until we have read it and made a comment on it, or you know, or rejected it back to the author saying, actually, you may need to rethink about, I think this is your opinion and not what's happened, you know.
Yeah.
So with the ClearCare system, it allowed us to, you know, for no one to actually submit the document until the managers, i.e. myself, had read it, okayed it, and then submitted it.
Yeah. With Mentor, the you're still able to read it and change it, but it's part of your daily pattern, isn't it? Your daily routine that you need to do. And I think that's,
Yeah.
I know how busy you all are, and I know how hard it can be to do that. And it's about reminding yourselves to do it, and have a look at it. Because for staff as well, when they go back and read and they see your comments, it's a shared comment, you know, so if it's a good piece of work, then they can learn from that. And I think, you know what I was saying earlier about this joy journal that I'm going to be doing in my school, is we've got to remember sometimes that it's too easy to concentrate on the negativity that gets recorded, but even a tiny little thing like, I can think of one from not so long ago where a young person was out and she hadn't been really fitting in very well with some of the other young people in the house, and she kept herself very much alone. But they'd taken her to a new cake place that had opened, and she chose cakes for the other kids as well as her and brought them back. Now that was huge, absolutely huge. And the member of staff initially had just recorded and they brought cakes back. And I unpicked it with the manager who unpicked it, and they discovered she'd carefully chosen a cake for each of the other 3 kids in the house and brought them back to share, which was an enormous step. So something as simple as that, if you can remind people to break that down and put that in, because that showed her saying, yeah, this is my home. And I can talk to these, but I don't want to talk to them all the time. Thank you very much. And there are days when it is too peoply out there and I'm going to stay in my room. But on that day, she showed she wanted to be part of it. Any other questions from anyone? No? Okay. Well, we said this is the shortest session that we do. And we do it deliberately brief. You will get a copy of all of the slides. One of the things that I found is really useful, and one of the homes that I'm involved in got outstanding yesterday, which I'm really excited about for the 3rd time now, 3 years running now. And one of the things that they do is they take presentations like this. I've done this with their managers, and they take it to the team meeting and do it in the team meeting as a whole, and make sure that it reminds them of what it is they're doing, but also it fits it in with the quality standards so that they can see it's not just you waffling, it's in the regulations, it's in the quality standards, but these are the reasons why. And this is what is so important. Yeah. Does anybody want to? I would imagine that most of you are very experienced, which is why you've come to this session. And I recognise a few of your faces from different sessions that I've done, and we have more coming up. But is there anything, Anne, I'm grateful to you for saying that sort of reading it out loud to a colleague, or even reading it out loud to yourself is something that you hadn't thought of before. Is there anything else anybody is going to take from today? For me, Pete has reinforced why I feel so passionate about making sure our records are accurate. I feel really, really strongly about this because we're privileged to be part of our children's lives, and then we screw them up by not writing things down the way that they should be. So it's about making sure that we get it right, and Pete's the voice, not me. So anything from anybody else? No? You will get a copy of the presentation that you can then use with your staff. The sessions are for an hour, but with time for sort of chatting, but sort of we've done it all fairly quickly. So if I can give you a tip, if you have booked an hour, 2 hours out of your day to have this, particularly, forgive me, staff members, those of you that are managers, I know how busy you are, go and have a cup of tea. Go and chill out and have that space for yourself where everybody thinks you're still in a training session, and just have that bit of time for yourself and do some taking care of yourself as well. And I'll see you next month at the next one. So thank you very much, everybody.